Hello everyone, welcome to this live Q&A, completely free, just a massive opportunity just to chat through some things. And this topic today has really driven so much of my unlearning, listening, reflection over the last decade at least of my career. And I thought I would share a little bit more about it. For those who I haven't met, my name's Alicia Edge. I'm an advanced sports dietitian and accredited dietitian. I am also eating disorder credentialed. And today we are talking about how to translate the science when it comes to working with clients, one-on-one, in groups, all of those types of things for those who are in the coalface of working with individuals looking to impact their lives positively. And to be honest, this is also a topic that has driven so much of where we have gone with our academy, the content that we create monthly for the academy and all of our modules and our professional development sessions, and also where we have so many great conversations. 'Cause I feel like, and many of you may agree, we spend so much time learning about the science, and at no point in this conversation am I going to discount the importance of that. This isn't one or the other. They're not mutually exclusive. It is the importance of paying attention, practicing, reflecting on how well we are translating our message to action, not just for discussion, telling, and working, above someone. So, you know, I find myself not necessarily needing to stress all that much when it comes to science knowledge when I'm mentoring dietitians in particular. We are all pretty passionate about nutrition science. There's a reason why we went into this industry and we know pretty well the major concepts, but I spend so much of my time on what that actually means to translate and practicing those skills. And I want to prevent us talking about translating the science and communication as a soft science here. I feel like when we name it a soft science, it takes away the importance of it and almost moves it down the tier of importance. So we are just making them even today. And I guess the big thing that comes up in this topic and why we've brought it up again this week in a different sense in these Q&As is because it does repeat itself a lot in how often we are discussing it with dietitians, but also other allied health practitioners. And, that big why of why we're here anyway. So I guess the first thing I wanted to get through is really like, why is it so critical to the job? And I'm definitely not here to tell anyone to suck eggs in this, and hopefully it's not different news that for you. But I guess the big thing is like, um, really just taking a moment before we dig into this of like thinking about the last time that you may have recommended something to a client, maybe prescribed or gave advice to a client that they didn't follow through with. And I think we can probably all think of multiple times that has happened. And I think the difference to how I approach that compared to new grad Alicia is very different. I think I definitely had that really strong belief that when people knew what to do, they would do it. When people had the passion of the science, like I did, and I shared that passion, they would also have the same curiosity, ability, capacity to enact that into their life. That's a really big assumption, though. And when we reflect on when that doesn't happen in a client, I think so often the blame, I would say accidentally. I don't think we intentionally blame our client for, lack of compliance, inability to care, lack of professionalism. I'm not talking language from the dietitian often, it's language from others as well. We often blame the client for not following through. We gave you the information. Why on earth didn't you follow it? And I think a lot of the time, particularly in nutrition, diet industry, the client feels that blame as well and that shame. My goodness, I had everything given to me. I was told what to do and I still couldn't do it. What on earth is wrong with me? I need to care more. I need to be more regimented or motivated or compliant. And so this blame shame thing really lands on one person and not both. And I would love to kind of dig into that discomfort of what if we shared responsibility for that not happening, and how can we show up better for our client to ensure that we are owning that together and not having a hierarchical, relationship with our clients as we are the experts in nutrition and you do what we say, but rather, yes, we are the experts in nutrition, but you are the expert in your life. And together, we should be able to create a progress step that feels doable, achievable, sustainable, and important to you, not to me, to you. And really defining success for them, not just success on what you feel they should be doing. And I think that can get really icky, really uncomfortable, very vulnerable when we're trying to really dig into that. So today we're going to chat through some of those strategies, some of those challenge points that have definitely been useful for me, but also really uncomfortable for me. And really appreciating that clients can hear every word and still leave not knowing what to do. Um, and we will dig into our over delivery of information at some point today, which relates to that. So, evidence, even knowledge, doesn't change behavior. And if we sit on that, that is where that really big discrepancy lies in making sure that our job isn't just to be knowledgeable or right or correct, it's actually to be understood and trusted to then enact action in that person's lives and impact. And I don't know about you, we all have different motivators and drivers to what gets us ticking in our professional lives. But so much of my motivator is in impact rather than financial, much to my husband's dismay. I probably need to increase some other ones, but I think if we're really looking at impact, we need to move further from knowing what to do and knowing what's right and being knowledgeable about the science and moving that further into how we're actually impacting it and what does this mean to the person in front of me. And this, when you're listening to it, make sure that you're not just talking or thinking of one client, but thinking of groups and how that and what that means to them and also your stakeholders. This session and the questions in it really relate to not only talking one-on-one to clients. So just make sure that you've got an open mind when you're thinking about these questions, reflecting, and hopefully get a lot out of it. So simplifying without dumbing down is definitely something that sometimes we feel like, well, if I simplify too much, I will dumb it down, I will miss context, I'll miss accuracy. However, I want to really challenge that to ensure that we're not just over explaining to protect our credentials or credibility, and we're not over explaining based around our need. Um, that sounds really weird. We're not over explaining in a way of going, I want to tell you all that I know, and over explaining based around the assumption that they're just as passionate, they're just as excited, they're just as curious about food and nutrition science as you. Gosh, I was guilty of that, guys. I think back to my first few years, particularly when I started at the AAS, I was a few years out by then. Oh my goodness. The science that I shared with 16-year-old guys about grams and timing. Oh my goodness, I missed the mark. And it took me probably too long to realize that that was actually really unuseful because they didn't have those core foundational features of even a curiosity, an understanding of why it was even important, an ability to shop or cook or plan food around their days or their lives. And grams of protein or timing had no relevance to them because there was no context for it to land on. And so I found that, yeah, not necessarily the hard way, but I had to do a lot of listening and a lot of challenging of my assumptions to get to a point where I was really happy with that program and how I then was able to build rapport, trust, and impact in that program by going back a really big step to then be able to move forward. And I still think back and I would have done things much differently now, but really proud of myself for pausing in the discomfort of taking on feedback from both players, staff, and mentors to then plan something a little bit better and more impactful for sure. And I think we do, I guess communicate science because we do love it. There's a reason why we got into this role, and I love nutrition science, still do, but it assumes someone is just as passionate. And I think a really important part of meeting somewhere that where they're at is also understanding how interested or curious or even how much capacity they've got in their nutrition. Because if you blurt out all this really exciting information and they have no foundational learning, no interest in what you're talking about, it's not going to land, it's not going to stick, and it's definitely not going to become an action or a behavior that makes a difference to their lives. And so everything you discuss, and this is where that stakeholder bit is really important, is so what? So what about this science? What does it actually mean to them and why does it matter? Get to that bit and ensure that you're focusing on that bit, and you will go such a long way to progressing your ability to translate the science. Now, the other bit to this is about the relevance, context, individualization, and also the timing in this communication piece. Because before you give information, it's really important that we consider the context and capacity. And I noted that a little bit in this session already, and the curiosity in front of you. Because when we meet someone where they're at, we're not just talking about where are they at, financially, where are they at physically, where are they at mentally. It's also where are they at in capacity, interest, education, all of those things as well, and in terms of skills. So information also out of context, and I'm sure we can all appreciate that in the whole interest of rote learning of university, of school, learning without context or curiosity is the worst. Like it's very rigid, it's very structured. It's a different way to learn, right? And you can learn it without retaining it. There is so much I learned for an exam that I then didn't retain. So just having that in mind, for example, if I had a group of athletes and I'm like, today we're going to talk about injury nutrition, and most of the room have never been injured, learning without context or curiosity or even an interest in this doesn't even apply to me. I won't get injured. I've never experienced this. They don't have that empathy for what we're talking about or the real reason why it matters or why it matters to them or could matter to them. However, if I stood in front of someone who has just gone through an ACL injury and I talk around why nutrition matters to them, when it is really important that we start, and what that's going to mean, and I develop something that is really intricate in based around their capacity currently, mentally and physically, but also what is going to get them back on pitch, have a really clear return to play outcome and positive outcome, then hey, guess what? I've captured their curiosity, I've captured them in context, and the timing is absolutely spot on. But if I try and do that ACL injury discussion before they've had an ACL injury, it's just information. It's just facts that may or may not stick for very long and they may not take much out of it. So, really, really important that when we're talking to someone, we're talking with them, not at them. I think the other thing to remember there in the timing is also the okay with repeatability. I think we have all had moments where, like, oh my gosh, I'm repeating myself. This person has definitely heard this before. But I think we can all think of clients where they have absolutely heard things multiple times before, but on the third or fourth time, it seems to click, or they get it delivered in a different way or by a different person. You're like, I've said that before. Why didn't you listen to me when I was telling you? It may have just been timing, it may have been the context, it might have been the, ability for that person to meet them where they're at, or for them to actually empathize with the person that was telling them. It really does tell you the importance of also peer-based learning and community-based learning a lot of the time. So there isn't that hierarchical structure or discrepancy in message. Lived experience is very valuable in things like trust and rapport, for example. And just making sure that, information becomes learning, but is learning then in context that becomes that action or that readiness for action, if you like. So, for example, someone might see you for feeling exhausted all the time, and you go in, right, you feel exhausted all the time. Let me tell you about energy availability. Energy availability is this importance of having energy available as well as what activity you're doing, and you're going into this education, right? But there's so much assumption between I'm feeling exhausted all the time and you assuming that it's energy availability that's the issue. And there's this massive gap of going, it could be energy availability and low energy availability that's flagging that fatigue, but also might not be. And the client has no idea how you just jumped from fatigue to energy availability. And first of all, actually just wants to be heard and validated. And you should probably take a step back, listen more, validate, and then move through what else you need to know or what other information we need to collect or seek to come up with a strategy together on what is going to help them achieve their definition of success, which in this instance is probably feeling a little bit more energy. That sounds so hard. Tell me more about that. All those types of prompting questions that are validating how relentless that must feel, how hard that must be to get through, training or family life or work life or whatever it may be that this person's going through with such high levels of fatigue, and then seeking a response and an action and then an education around what we actually can do or should do as a step by step and what success can look like in the end. Um, Validate and listen first, please. So really just seeking more info and understanding first. And individualization isn't, I think sometimes in nutrition, we see individualization as, oh, I will individualize the numbers, the macros, the meal plan. I'll individualize the infographics that you get or the recipes. But in reality, individualization isn't the number or prescription we give someone. Individualization is literally taking a step back and appreciating who that person is, not just what they need to be doing. So, taking that pause is really, really important. The communication pitfalls that I guess are so key and probably so common in dietetics and allied health in particular is I feel like hopefully a lot of us have moved away from this, but it's definitely something we could probably appreciate is done a lot in the nutrition industry and on social media is utilizing jargon as a credibility shield, and using words, acronyms that the individual in front of us can't understand or wouldn't understand. We lose them right away. They either shut down because it's overwhelming or they judge themselves for being stupid, they should know, they're lost, they're overwhelmed, their head leaves the room, and also the relationship also gets severed as well. And also education without understanding. So, like if you're utilizing big words, big terms, lots of information, lots of detail, you'll then, really only achieve overwhelm rather than empowerment and control. And also, they will feel talked at rather than talked with as a conversation that's two-sided. Again, I can't repeat enough that listening to their expertise in their life and their experience is just as important as your expertise in nutrition. So they need to meet each other rather than one being superior in a conversation than the other. The other big one I really want to spend some time on here is information overload. Now, I get it. It feels like there's so much pressure to give information and something tangible to a science or a service that sometimes feels untangible, intangible. Oh gosh, I don't actually know which bit is right here. But if someone leaves a session with us or a conversation with us and without something tangible in their inbox or in their hand, have we provided value? And what I notice and what I definitely mentor here so often in mentoring in particular is how much time we spend outside of a session on meal plans, resources, booklets, all the things, and also how much time our profession spends in Canva is insane. And I think the really big challenge here is we are overloading our clients with information in the hope that volume equals value. And I really want to challenge that because I feel like we're missing such an opportunity here to really listen to our clients and also challenge the assumption that they're coming to us for something. They're coming to us for a tangible item like a meal plan or a resource or a how-to booklet. And once I give them information, they will see how valuable I am. However, when we've got it framed that way, we have made it about us and not them. Now, I think a lot of this is a symptom of trying to compete with a lot of nutrition professionals and a lot of nutrition voices. And the more we give, then the more value we can provide in volume. However, I would say it is very rare to come across a client who obtains a very specific meal plan with lots of resources and recipes and goes, "Oh my God, I'm fixed. You have absolutely resolved all of my challenges through this PDF. I do not now need to see you again." That would be a very rare occasion for a very rare client. What you want to do instead is really challenge the notion that the more I give, the more value I'm providing, and instead challenge it of going, let's actually look at quality of rapport, of meeting that client where they're at and shifting the needle in the capacity they've got right now, the ability they've got in different areas, and really prioritizing where they're going to get the biggest bang for their buck and challenging how much you need to give for that. One of our dietitians this week, I was chatting to her and she had come up with a resource that had helped a lot of her clients. And she's like, within a week, this client feels like this. I was like, oh my gosh, would you be open to sharing that? I would love to see it. And she's like, oh my God, Alicia, I can't, like, it is not pretty. I'm not good at Canva. I'm like, whoa, it doesn't actually matter what it looks like. It matters that it's impacting lives and what you have created is valuable because it's shifting behavior and it's alleviating symptoms. So I think the really big piece here is sometimes we wait for something to be perfect or really detailed before we put it out to the world, when in reality, we need to shift it to what does this person need and why does it matter? And what is going to help them get to a point of confidence in changing some kind of action or behavior towards achieving that. And it's very unlikely that a PDF download of multiple pages will do long-term shifts in all areas of their friction that are stopping them in their nutrition behaviors that they're looking to achieve. It's not to say that they don't have value in things like resources, menu guides, recipes, but definitely make sure that we're targeting these resources or deliverables at a pace that suits them and isn't going to leave them feeling completely overwhelmed when they get home and try and read it all, or completely like a failure when they can't follow it. Because all of a sudden you've given them what you have sold as the solution, and so it's their fault or their problem that they can't follow the solution that maybe doesn't match their lives or the friction or the reality of their lives in all different social, emotional, and physical areas in their environment. So just something to think about and really break down, because the goal isn't just to see someone for half hour, an hour, give them everything and never see them again. We are counselors, and a really big shift in that needs to come from, I don't just deliver the science, I deliver a behavior change solution that can take time and will coach you through. Um, Oh, I spent a lot of time on that. I did warn you before I started talking about that, but it is a really big piece that takes up a lot of my time in mentoring, not in a bad way, just in a really common discussion way when we have dietitians, that we're mentoring that feel really overwhelmed with the workload that the delivery of this volume of information does give without the monetary return as well. So just something to think about. And I think just even reflect on and notice to then work through. And even just asking clients how helpful is this? How confident does it help make you? How can we shift it or improve it? Can really, really help as well. The other thing, I guess, in the communication piece is the correction reflex. I think a lot of us have. We are helpers. We are fixers. We work in health probably for a reason. And it means that sometimes we are ones to rush in to fix, to correct, and sometimes we can do that too quickly. So when we're translating the science, it's really important that we don't try and challenge too quickly and really ensuring that we're reflecting on information that we're getting fed in conversation and always questioning how much of a priority is that right now? Okay, I note that that is something that is a misunderstanding or some inaccuracy. Is that something for now? Like, is this a super large priority for why this person's here that I need to work through and discuss, or can I actually save that for future me to discuss or talk about when we've got a really solid rapport, trust, progress is already shifting, and it's something that is now a next step. So just really keeping on the radar that you don't need to fix and correct everything as it comes up. And that really leans into the importance of not breaking or disagreeing with beliefs. Oh, it's a hard one. It's something that I am still working on, particularly in stakeholders, where we will always come across really strong food beliefs in all of our practice. It is going to exist forever and a day. It has always been there in different ways. And now with social media, with the use of food and dietary as a belief system, it's probably even stronger than ever. Um, so ensuring that we don't close conversation by challenging beliefs too soon or too strongly is really important. And we can definitely talk about that a little bit later as well. Or catastrophizing different things in food. So things like you should never, or that would be so bad, or definitely never do that. Or putting moral value on things like good versus bad, all are going to place an overemphasis on food and the science, but also place the risk of a whole lot of shame and guilt if that person happens to do that or do it again or continue doing it, all those types of things. So just making sure we're not doing that, and just watching for disconnect. I think we as empaths, most of us in dietetics are very high empaths, will be very good at reading body language and signs on people's faces of the moment they disconnect, and really lean into that and be really open to, these the opportunity to like really sit in silence, to allow time to reflect, be uncomfortable, to really like challenge, but also reflect back on the different conversations or what's important to them. So when you read, like, oh, actually, just to like jump into some strategies, because I just looked at the time. Um, Number one, probably the thing that helped me most, and I'm not saying this like I'm really good at translating science. I think I'm continually improving on it. But one of the things that I would say helped me the most is going into professional development opportunities and reading research and topics with the goal of explaining them rather than the goal of knowing them. Honestly, hands down, if there is one shift you make when it comes to translating science, is going into the next professional development seminar or the next research paper you read, going and going, I'm going to learn this with the goal to explain it simply rather than I'm going to learn this to know more about this nutrition science fact or different topic. It honestly, game changer, has absolutely changed how I see nutrition science, how I listen to different professional development. It honestly, for free, guys, I'm giving you that one that has absolutely changed my trajectory and how I communicate. Also, how would I explain this to someone with no nutrition background? Why does it matter to them? Why would it matter to them? Are really hard like questions, but really, really important. For example, I'm writing a stakeholder report at the moment for one of the squads we work with, and the whole time I'm doing it is like, why does this matter? That's great that eating disorder rates are the lowest they've ever been, but why do they care? Why does this matter? And dear God, it is harsh on me and it's really uncomfortable because I know like how exciting this is, incredible for the squad, and I'm so proud of what we've done. But why do they care? Why does it matter to their bottom line? Why does it matter to their performance, their availability? All those types of things are so important to come back to. So this is where like, yes, it works in the individual client sense of why do they actually care and why does it matter? But also why does it matter in terms of communication to the stakeholder as well? And also, we rarely learn with translation being the goal, but I think flipping that, learning to actually, can I explain this simply, is an incredible step forward. And in consults and conversations, the different things that you can do from today are things like swapping like little moments of like, does that make sense? Oh man, I still do that. So, see, I'm still like trying to learn, but to like, how does that sit with you? Like, we've just talked through a lot today. How does that feel? How does that sit? How confident are you that you'll be able to leave today being able to do that thing that we've talked about? And talking through that, it's probably also really pertinent to add when we're going through strategies or things we're looking to change or adapt, doing it with the client and not at the client is game changer. So, for example, one of the things that I've noticed we really need to work on or is a really big opportunity area is your hydration. Do you have any ideas or have you thought of anything recently that could help or something you've noticed you really love doing? And then prompt them to plan out how they're going to improve. Oh my gosh, yes, I noticed that I really like that addition of, different citrus fruits in my water bottle the other day. I drank so much more. Or I had some bubbly water the other day and I found that so much easier. Or I had tap water the other day and I just didn't even touch my drink bottle. I don't think I like room water, room temperature water. All those different prompts of them then coming up with their own solutions rather than you going, okay, you need to drink 1.5 liters, da da da. Like it's less prescriptive and way more team-based efforts. And that in itself is translating the science in a way that actually suits them, not just you running off numbers, if that makes sense. See, I just said, does that make sense? Honestly, worst. But yes, I think I have talked enough today. I have gone over the half hour. I really thought this was going to be a fast session, but turns out I can talk all day about this topic, so I shall stop. There is so much more that we talk about in translating the science in our modules that we have within the Compeat Academy. As I said, it is like one of the core pieces of why we started the academy. We talk about the science, absolutely, in all we do, but we always, in all of our modules and topics, we translate that into what it means, why it matters, and how to communicate it with our clients better. So heaps more in our academy, particularly the professional membership if you're after all of that access. The big starter membership is great for $10 a month if you just want some community, some information around like latest articles and these types of discussions. But the pro membership gives you a whole lot more access to how to do it, why it matters, practicing those skills to make you an incredible practitioner beyond what you already are, but like really just helping support you to stay and stay in the profession, number one, but also feel really connected to the profession as well. So, looking forward to hearing from you. If you have any questions, please let me know. I do have one question that I've been asked, so if we don't, I can jump straight to that one. This one, how do I work with clients with really rigid food beliefs? Oh my God. Honestly, this is probably like one of the things that can be so challenging in our profession to work patiently, proactively, and with impact because it feels so hard to break a belief. And that is where I think we go wrong, is we always go into these conversations wanting to break the belief rather than trying to shift it and open, I guess, the different things. So the one way I was thinking about trying to explain this when this question came through is so often like think of the belief as like a really rigid window, right? You can see the frame, it is one size, it's quite small. There are some really core beliefs in that window. And the first thing is getting curious about where that rigidity might have come from, but also what purpose and function is it serving that person? Is it creating a sense of control, safety, identity, or predictability in their life? Because that bit, the why, is really, really important. Because as soon as you challenge or try and break that belief, you need to think about how that is triggering what function it is serving for them. So, say they've got a really rigid food belief and you discount that or try and debunk it way too early, you haven't got rapport, you have no trust, and you do it quite extremely, you are then challenging their sense of control, their sense of identity, their sense of predictability or safety. So think about it in that way. There's a function here that this window is serving. We don't want to break the window. What we actually want to do is not rush to correct, but thinking about it in a way of not dismantling, but rather increasing the size? How do I stretch the size of this window rather than smashing through it or trying to dismantle it? And I think that really simple shift is probably the most useful in starting to get better in those conversations. So, not rushing into the science or research shows kind of reply, but rather going, wow, that is so interesting. And I hear how important that is to you. Can we spend some time, working through where that, when you notice that become really important to you, how it makes you feel, and then you can then see those opportunities from there on how to start to stretch the size of that window rather than telling them that that's not true, and then pretty much losing that conversation and relationship from there. Um, I think we need to talk more about that actually. Mon, note to us, we will do a session on this. Thank you so much. I appreciate that I have taken more of your time than I said, which was well over half hour, but I hope you have enjoyed the session and the topics involved. And thank you so much, Monica, for organizing the session, organizing me, and also making sure that we cover these really important topics. But yes, please join the Academy. We love having you as part of the membership. And there's an option for all different types of financial need to ensure that you can be a part of it at any point in time.